Hi, Panos. Welcome back. And
Hi, Dario.
it's really interesting when I'm with you. I get to feel and experience things that I thought they could be experienced only by doing things, and actually by talking about things. I've had a lot of things coming up, and a lot of reflections also on myself and the power I have over my own experience. And I believe that this is a very good, at least for me. I hope this could be grasped by people that are looking at this. But anyway, let's get right into the next session. So what are we talking about today?
Fantastic. So as an introduction, I just want to, I don't recall the actual reference, I can go and find it, but this is like 30 years ago. I came across this research. I think it was at some university in California, maybe UCLA, I'm not sure. Anyhow, and it was like this. They were doing an experiment on visualization, and they had two people, person A and person B. They would do this every day from about 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, the whole day. And it went on for days. It worked like this. Person A would speak to person B. They're both lying down in a semi-literal, very almost dark. And A is talking to B. And he's telling A, saying, for example, we're walking down the road, like you said, we're going to the restaurant, or we see this tree, or whatever it was. He was describing stuff in his mind. B would just listen and see what comes up in his mind. They kept doing it. Now, please understand, this is different from what we did in the previous episode, where I didn't tell you what to imagine. You came up with your stuff. This is different. A was telling B, imagine a tree, imagine the road, etc. Now, after about a week, now imagine every morning those two same people show up, lie on the beds and continue, right? After about a week, B started experiencing things before A would talk about them. So B would say, hey, I see a bird in the tree. The guy says, yes. What does it look like? Yellow with, yes, I see the same. Okay, so after a week of this, the two of them are so synchronized that they were starting to share an experience, which sounds wow, okay? And again, please understand, this is 30 years ago. I'm trying to remember the research as best as I could. After 3 weeks, B disappeared. So when the process began, A would say stuff, B would be, there wouldn't be a person there anymore. By the time he would come back, as it were, to normal consciousness, he freaked. He said, what is this? I'm losing myself. I don't want to do this anymore. And he left, okay? What I'm trying to illustrate here is that the stuff we're talking about is really very powerful, okay? It's very intense. It's really real in that word, okay? Provided you're willing to invest the time and put enough detail into what we're doing to make it seem real. How? By consistently repeating the stimulus for your brain to register it as reality, okay? So this is just background. Now, in the previous episode, we had a happy experience. You went to the restaurant, everybody was happy, you felt fulfillment, was great. But most people, when they enter their mind for the first time, generally speaking, they come face to face with fears, anxieties, all kinds of, because there's reason for that. We're not going to go into it. Generally, brains pay more attention to problems than they pay to excitement. But be it as it may, that's too much information for our sessions. Okay. So given that, let us go back to the experience that we had last time, which was about you going to a restaurant and feeling fulfilled, right? Fulfillment was the word you used?
Yes.
Okay. So now I'm going to ask you questions and see what happens. Okay. Please play along.
Yeah.
This may not be as pleasant as the previous one, but for the sake of description, tell me something. What kind of person would never feel the feeling of fulfillment?
A person focused on concern, a person focused on perfection, which is, like a person that it says, people that think that is never enough. I mean, whatever they get to have is not enough. And I think that type of people don't
okay.
really...
And what would you call such a person?
I don't know. I don't know. I really, I think, I know a lot of them, and perfectionist usually is that type of people. People that look
okay.
for the ideal into the real.
Okay. So let's start with perfectionist. Now, if someone is a perfectionist to the point where they're never satisfied, what kind of experience are they having?
They're having the experience of frustration because things are not enough.
Right. And as they're feeling more and more frustrated, what must they do?
They must to correct either themselves or others or reality. They want to control things, knowing, I don't know if they know this, but it's impossible to control them. So the feeling of frustration will rise.
Exactly, which is exactly what I was going to ask you. And supposing they can't control anything, then what happens?
Well, the funny thing, at least in the experience I have, is that they continue to look for it, even if they know that they cannot find it.
Okay. And if they continue like this, they keep on looking and looking, knowing even that they can't find it, but they can't help themselves. What will be the result of that? What do they become?
I think cynicists. I mean, they start to become cynicists, and they start to make fun of what simple people, make fun of people that find satisfaction. They start to
Right.
scorn the ones that they see are satisfied about their life, because they can be satisfied by their own, and so they have to disregard or devalue what other people do when they're satisfied.
So they start devaluing others' happiness, right?
Yes. Yes.
As they find themselves deeper and deeper into this cynical way of looking at the world and devaluing what other people enjoy, right? What happens to them then? What's the next phase?
I think it's bitterness, like bitterness in the sense of, bitterness to me is like it's like being very, not just sad but upset.
Yes. So they become cynical, then they become bitter. And if you can imagine this thing playing out over years, how do you think they're going to end up?
Lonely, for sure. No one
Lonely.
likes to be around those kind of people, and just I don't know, but I see them as lonely and as not depressed, but really, dead inside. That could be
dead inside, right? So they're lonely, they're dead inside, they're marginalized by other people. Tell me something. How would a person like that die?
What do you mean by how would they die? Physically?
How will they die? How do you imagine them they will die? In what circumstances? How will they die?
Alone, for sure, and probably some kind of I think there's a lot of that has a lot to do with the stomach, like I don't know, ulcers, like when you get very upset, you have like really, some digestion disease, something that has to do with your stomach. I think there's something there.
Okay. Okay. So let me ask you a more specific question, right? Can you describe to me, where is this person dying? Is he inside a house? Is he inside a hospital? Is he out in the street? What do you see in your mind? What's your video?
Well, that doesn't mean that it has to be that way, but the way I see him is like really either in the hospital or in the house, but either way, that not even the nurse.
No, pick one, hospital or house. Which one?
Oh, let's say hospital.
Okay, and describe to me, what do you see? What does the room look like? What is the person feeling? What's it like?
The person feels even more upset because he's now losing the last thing that he cared for, and I see the nurse being very frustrated at him, not wanting to be in the room with him. I see the person calling the nurse every 2 minutes, and nurse is not wanting to go there, and I see the person even looking for something to numb themselves out, but the anger doesn't leave him.
Yeah. Now, as the person is about to die, what do you think is going to be uppermost in their mind?
The regret that life has not been the way they wanted it to be.
Right. Now, one could argue that this is the doorway to hell. Now, again, there's some science that says at the time of death, a lot of energy goes into the brain, a lot of, we can call it fantasy, we can call it whatever you like, become activated. So if you for a whole life been collecting memories and impressions of frustration, cynicism, devaluing other people, misery and all that, at the point where you depart, you're going to be faced with that as your reality. Now, whether the person dies and the whole thing stops, or that they enter an imaginary world, we don't know, but that's not the point. The point that we're making is this: how did it feel for you to describe this person in that situation? Find a word when he's about to die. How did you feel?
Oh, to me, I'm sad. Honestly, very sad, because I think you're talking about the doorway to hell. I think the hell was in his life. It didn't start there. I mean,
exactly.
he embraced hell before dying. He
Yeah.
was dead before
Yeah.
dying. And I think that's really the
Yeah.
sadness, because it's the loss of a potential human being that could have given himself to life and generated more
Yeah.
value. And he chose to
Yeah.
be in hell rather than on the earth, even before that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's very interesting, this, and perhaps it's important. Maybe let me see if you find it interesting. Isn't it interesting that in the Christian church, the remedy for that is repentance?
Mm.
In other words, they will get a priest in, or somebody who's qualified, dressed in a certain way and all that. And then the person would confess, oh, this, all my life I was hating people, I was this and that and the other. And the guy says, okay, your sins are absolved. And hoping, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, that he can just let go of what? Of watching the video of the suffering that he's put onto himself.
Yes.
So that's just an aside, just to put in context that all these traditions that, people have associated with the church and all that, they have fundamental psychological benefits. I'm just putting that as an aside.
Yeah.
The question that I asked you is, how do you feel? You say to me, sad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm willing to bet money that this sadness, again, this came obvious now because it came out of you. I didn't say to you, Davide, go and feel sad. You said to me, what happens? Well, the person will be cynical, this and that, that. All of this video came from your mind, which means it's sitting there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So this picture that you had of some guy dying in a hospital with the nurses don't want to talk to him is a video that you got in your video library that you call Davide. The feeling that it generates is a familiar feeling. It's not the first time you've had it.
No.
And I'm willing to bet that when things are not going the way you want them, you're going to feel some of that sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Either as regret or something. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
So suddenly you're telling me, hang on a second, inside my head, I've got a horror movie section that goes dying alone in hospital.
Right.
All right. And that's the movie. And when you play that movie, you feel, oh man, this is terrible.
Let me add something to that, because, my life has been quite, I would say like 5 or 6 lives. But in one of those lives, I accompanied people in the 90s to die. Basically, when HIV turned into, AIDS. And for 5 years, I worked in the hospital, with people that were dying of AIDS, and I brought people with me doing that. And that sadness was there because, and I remember one thing, and I just want to share this with you because, there was a guy that didn't have both legs, and he had a fluidifier on his blood because, if he took the machine away, the blood would coagulate and he would die. And we would all avoid that room. We were there to encourage these people.
Oh, wow.
We were all trying to avoid the room. And all of a sudden, this guy calls me. He sees me in the corridor and says, hey, man, come in. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go in.
Oh, fuck.
I went in, and basically the conversation went as he was encouraging me. I was there to encourage him, but I couldn't say anything. He was 27 years old. He was a young guy, and he was dying on the bed. In fact, the next week he wasn't there anymore. But that moment for me was like he encouraged me to look at my own death, and not to be afraid of it, because he wanted to talk about his end. And nobody wanted to talk about the end with him, and he kind of forced me to go in because I was the main guy, so I was teaching others to do that, and I did not want to do it. But when I went in and he was encouraging me, and I was like, it touched my heart because, I didn't want to face my own death. And in fact, being alone in the hospital, that is really something, that I believe I was trying to avoid for them. But at the end of the day, I was trying to avoid it for myself. And to look at him there, it's really powerful because I have to face my own death, and that's kind of my
that's it. That's it. So to link what we did in the previous session, which was about being happy and fulfilled, to this one, which is about feeling sad and frightened, the thing that I believe the next episode should be is, hey, wait a minute, is there an alternative? In other words, either being happy or being frightened are two options. Is there a place other than those two where we can approach either of these as a sort of a place of freedom or a place of choice?
Right.
And so I think for the sake of this episode, we could stop it here and say, okay, hang on. In the previous episode, we found there's a heaven in me. For me, it's a restaurant. For you, it's something else. Doesn't matter. Something. Why? To bring out the feeling. And the feeling is already with me. I don't have to go and find it outside. It's here. Wherever I do, wherever I go, whatever I do is to get the feeling out.
Yeah.
Equally, there's other feelings,
Yeah.
which, as I said before, a lot of people encounter first.
Yes.
You know, especially now, they're on lockdown, they're worried about the economy. Feelings of fear and anxiety will come up first.
Yeah.
It's important to know, I got in, you know, when I was doing this work, when I was studying this stuff back in the 90s, my horror movie was that I'm going to die on my own without teeth, in my own piss, in a flat in some suburb in Joburg called Hillbrow, which was a very low-end side of town, right? And I had this video in my head. And when I became aware of it, well, it was liberating. So I thought, shit, it's just a fucking video. Wow. You know, I mean, I was like, I was so happy when I became aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because before you become aware of it, it just sits just here,
yeah.
and it whispers. You don't see it directly.
Yeah.
You get the feeling, and the feeling locks you up.
Yeah.
So for the sake of this video, let's stop there. And in the next one, we can look at how do you step outside of both.
That's great. Now, just to finish even my situation, what I believe also is like when I face my own death, I feel like I can embrace everything in my life. So, you know, I think this exercise is powerful, even because I don't, if I run from what's going to happen, no matter what, because, you know, even if you want it or don't want it, we're going to die, you know, one way or another. So to embrace the possibility of that is really some way to allow the present to be valuable, you know. And so I hope this is going to be part of the message that we're going to send.
Let me just sorry, let me, for the sake of the conversation that we're having before in this episode, right, let me just change what you said slightly.
Mm-hmm.
You can never face your own death until the moment it happens. What we're talking about is face the ideas that we have.
Exactly.
Now, it's a big difference when you realize, oh, these are my ideas, these are my feelings,
yes,
and I can experience them. Therefore, I'm something bigger, which we will do in the next episode. So it's the ideas and feelings about, not the actual thing.
It is true. It is true. And I want to add to that, because now we're adding to each other, but let me add this to that. You know, I've seen a lot of people dying alone because their relatives didn't want to face their own fear of death. You know, and so they were pretending the disease was not there. And that, to me, you know, it's a waste of value, because we want to die with somebody. We want to share our end with somebody. And if I'm not ready to embrace my fear of death, I'm not going to be able to allow somebody to talk about their own death. And I believe, you know, in families, that's a powerful thing. You know, we avoid our own death by not looking at somebody that's dying around us. And so my encouragement for anybody that may listen to this is just to embrace whatever somebody else is going through, because it's going to be a mirror for your thoughts of fear and your thoughts of death. But that's going to help them and you to go.
You see, for the family, they have to face their ideas of death.
Right.
For the person dying, they have to face the experience of death. They're two different things, actually.
Exactly.
And very seldom do people realize these are just my ideas. They think, no, I can't think of this, and they don't even want to talk about it.
Right.
And that is the part that you and I are trying to step across.
Yeah, and even the gift that they can give to the person that is really dying, because, you know, a person that is really dying wants to close their life, wants to bring to a closure. So, you know, I know this is not a fun conversation, but it was actually very deep.
No, wait, sorry. Oh, let me, and again, maybe we don't have, I don't know if we have time in this episode, we should do another one on death and dying. I think that's really important. Yeah. Because the way we think about things, let's say, for example, the way that people think about death in the West, right? You never see the person. If they're dead, they take them away, they put them in a box, bye-bye, gone. In places like India, for example, a guy dies in the street, he drops dead on the spot. A dog, I've seen this, a dog might grab his leg and run. And people don't even flinch. Oh, well, some guy died, whatever. They keep walking, they walk over him. What I'm saying is there are places on this planet where people experience death often, on a daily basis, actually, and they don't even think about it. In other parts, like in the West, it gets covered up. And so what I'm saying is there's a lot of ways to look at this, and it might be worth a proper discussion.
I think so. I think because it's a very deep topic, and we all need to face that sooner or later, even if you want it or not. Yeah. So, you know, for now, I just thank you for this episode, and we'll talk soon, Panos. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Davide. Have a great day. Ciao.
You too. Ciao.